perhaps talk about something that surprised you in the work that you were doing? Something that you, oh, I never expected that. I never thought that,
I know just what surprised me. Lesbians. I'm serious. One of the things, they're probably saying, did she just say that? What is she talking about? One of the things that surprised me, I had heard a lot about homophobia. I had heard a lot, and as you would imagine, within neighborhoods or gangs, whether African American or Latino, you would expect there to be, with the macho aspect of the culture, you would expect there to be some degree of homophobia. Now, I will admit, I have seen one individual who was out, who was gay, a gay man, who said he was formerly a gang member. But what I was astonished is, as I began to meet and talk and sort of fall in love with the women that I was interviewing and living with, many of them were lesbians, and many of them were in love and had girlfriends, and they were out, and they were open, and by the way, they were black, and they were brown. And what surprised me, and what I was not prepared for, was it was completely open, it was completely accepted, and it was integrated within gang life in ways that I never would have imagined. And that's what was shocking to me and surprising. Now, the other surprise will be more obvious when I share it with you, which is what was surprising to me was how deeply and passionately I fell in love with this group of people, this population. They became part of my chosen family in ways that I could never, ever have envisioned. And despite the hardship and the violence and the pain, they enlarged my life in ways, and continue to enlarge my life in ways that I never could have anticipated. So that was the surprise, both of those.
And maybe for you both is like, so what's some basic advice for someone, who wants to get out of gang life? I mean, what would you say? What do you say to someone?
For somebody who's trying to get out of the gang life, I would say there's hope. And I would say it's possible. Believe in the impossible and believe that you can change, and believe in yourself. That's what I would tell somebody that wants to change. Or I would just tell them, you can do it. I believe in you.
Yes, the other thing that I would say, and I think Will has just eloquently talked about the affective or the emotional part of it. The other part of it is it's almost a truism that you cannot take something away without putting something in its place. And what I would say to anyone who wanted to leave the neighborhood or wanted to leave a gang is, this is wonderful, I love you, I embrace you. What are you going to replace the gang with? Because, a vacuum is always filled. One of the things, interestingly, sadly, but important for all of us to know and consider is, what do you think most frequently replaces the gang in the life of a young man or young woman who seeks to leave the gang life? What do you think replaces the gang? Prison, that often is involuntarily. It's not involuntary. It's not chosen. Family, we would want it to be family. The sadness is what, I don't say most frequently, but often replaces the gangs, are drugs. And there's a very good reason why. Every single person who has been in a gang or has been affiliated with a gang should have post-traumatic stress disorder sort of stamped metaphorically in their life, because these are people who have experienced trauma. And when you experience trauma, you need to take care of yourself, and one of the most common ways people take care of themselves is to self-medicate. And they use drugs in order to do this. So what I would want to say to a gang member, or what I would want to say as part of the journey back, is that you need to put something in place of the gang life. That is, for better or for worse, quite honestly, what a place like Homeboy Industry does. it puts another community in place of the gang life. And any program that is successful, and I've looked at them across the United States, any program that is truly successful puts another family, another community, another series of relationships in the place of the gang. Without that, how could you leave? I could not. If I was going into a void, if I was going into nothingness, I would go running back to the gang because that would be home for me. So their struggle and our struggle is to provide something that will fill their lives in the place that the gang once held.
It's great you were talking about that. Some of the models you looked at you know, there are gang prevention programs right around Los Angeles. We're talking about one of the ways to work with gangs is to exchange them. So we all know that California, Los Angeles has a shortfall in funds. You know, so some of those programs or models may not be there. So what else can be done? You know, that an ordinary person can do if social scientists and social programs aren't there anymore.
Well, I don't want to turn this into an academic evening. It's a great question. What I'll tell you is and trust me, I'm a yellow dog Democrat. I'm the third generation in my family to be a Democrat, so I don't want you to think I'm suddenly spouting a Republican line. It takes money, but I truly believe the solution, whether preventive or intervention, having somebody re-enter society, the solution is very simple and impossibly complicated. The solution is relational. The solution is attachment. We have to find ways through schools, through communities, for what we do for people, to provide attachments for them and relationships for them that will stand in the place of the gang. I don't want to get into a big policy discussion. I think it's an important question, but really what I want to talk about are the feelings and the understanding that we all need to have. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you, okay, go out now and hug a homie, all right? I don't mean that. And in some cases, I don't want you to. I really don't want you to. But I think we've got to understand that underlying all of gang existence is pain. This is not about guns and excitement and force and glamour. This is about pain. And I think if we reach into our own lives, pain is solved by attachment and relationships. My guess is if I ask every single person in this room, and I'm not going to, if I asked each and every one of you what was the most painful thing you went through in your life, the most traumatic, the most devastating, the way you came out of it was through the relationships you possessed and the people who supported you. And once again, my message is, and this is what is just implicit and explicit in my book, it is no different for any of these young men and young women. So the short answer, or the long answer to the short question is, if we dealt more with relationships, whether it was in school, all the way through the community and our families, we would see a lot less gang violence and a lot more productivity. Because here's my question for all of you. How much have we lost as a society for young men and young women who have been killed? Young men and young women who had talents, who had aptitudes, who were musicians, who were mothers, who were fathers, who were teachers. Who have we lost because of this plague? And that's why we've got to think about that and think about the relationships that will ensure that this doesn't happen in the future.
Do you have any questions from the audience?